Hey Ryan, what's on your radar?
Joe Manchin yesterday told reporters he has no idea where people are getting this crazy notion that there's been some sort of a deal to move an infrastructure bill and a reconciliation bill together, that either both go through or neither go through.
Senator, progressives feel, though, you're not dealing in good faith. They felt that there was a deal made before.
I never knew about that. Never heard of it.
So you were never part of a deal that linked the two bills together?
About two of them are going to be together?
Yeah.
Why do you think we work so hard to separate them? Two completely different subject matters.
So I asked Stephanie Murphy, one of the key House holdouts, the same thing, and this is what she told me.
Last question, what about the allegation that this is breaking a deal? That the deal was they would both go together and that the Senate is built on trust among its members?
I would point you back to the media reporting around when this came about and assert that that's historical fiction as to how this came about.
So after speaking with Murphy, I saw Bernie Sanders outside the Capitol. Sanders is chair of the Budget Committee, which is in charge of writing the reconciliation bill. And I asked him first what kind of assurances he would need that reconciliation was happening before he'd approve of voting for the bipartisan bill. And I also asked him about Murphy's claim that there was never any deal.
Look, people are nervous, and I am, that if you were simply to pass the physical infrastructure bill, the leverage to pass the reconciliation bill would disappear. And that's not acceptable. So what we need to do is go forward as was the original plan on a dual track. I mean, that's what Schumer talked about, Pelosi talked about, the president talked about, I talked about. That's what we got to do. And that means, good, you got an agreement here on reconciliation, you got an agreement here on infrastructure, let's do it.
And so that you need legislative text, you think?
You need to be, I don't know, you need it to be explicitly as, whether it's legislative text or whatever it is, we need to know exactly what's in the bill. Mm-hmm. We need to agree upon that, and we need to make sure that 50 senators are on board that.
Stephanie Murphy was just saying that it's a historical fiction that there was a deal that both of these would go together. You were part of that history. What's your take on that?
I mean, it's what Pelosi said, it's what the president said, it's what Schumer said, it's what I said. I mean, it's not fiction. I mean, that's been said. I mean, Google it. Right?
Okay, so I Googled it. And since there was one particular story I was looking for, the Googling didn't take very long. I wrote about this back in June for The Intercept, and I've done more radars here on this two-track strategy than I can count. Here's one of those stories, and it reads, over the past week, as Congress negotiated the bipartisan infrastructure package that would include less than $600 billion in new spending, a slew of Democrats in the House and Senate said that they won't vote for any bill that lacks sufficient funding for climate-related projects and social investments. The White House announced that the bipartisan bargain had been agreed to Wednesday night, and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said Thursday morning that the House would not pass the bipartisan bill without a reconciliation package endorsing a so-called two-track strategy. Pelosi, in fact, was quite explicit, saying, "We will not take up a bill in the House until the Senate passes the bipartisan bill and a reconciliation bill. If there is no bipartisan bill, then we'll just go when the Senate passes a reconciliation bill. But I'm hopeful that we will have the bipartisan bill." She added, "There ain't gonna be no bipartisan bill unless we're going to have a reconciliation bill." Here's Biden saying basically the same thing.
By moving forward with this two-track system, are you putting the bipartisan bill in jeopardy?
Sure, the bipartisan bill was, look, the bipartisan bill from the very beginning was understood there's going to have to be the second part of it. I'm not just signing the bipartisan bill and forgetting about the rest that I proposed. I proposed a significant piece of legislation in three parts. And all three parts are equally important.
So Republicans freaked out after Biden's comments, saying it was unfair of him to publicly link the two together, even though Democrats had been loudly saying that was the deal. Guess who came to Biden's defense that afternoon? Here's from my June article. Quote, "It's the only strategy we have is two-track." That's Joe Manchin talking. So much for Joe Manchin's claim he'd never heard of this deal. Emily, you ever seen such a brazen walkback of a deal before? It's one thing to say, you know what, things have changed. This is not the deal anymore. Now, it may be true that Manchin's signature is not on any paper that says that these things are going together, but he knew, as he said at the time, that this was the only strategy we have is two tracks. How do you wiggle out of that?
I mean, I think we saw something similar with Republicans when they tried to repeal Obamacare under Donald Trump, which was a long time
We
promise.
we'd sign it into law. We said we would pass repeal in the House. Isn't that enough for you people?
Well, and so to that extent, I don't think that this is unusually brazen for Washington. I think it is usual. It's quite
It's
typical.
usually brazen.
It is crazily brazen, but it is very much, I think, typical. And Joe Manchin, I mean, you are absolutely right. And this does feel like a culmination of so much of what you talked about this summer here, what you wrote about this summer. But it is like Bernie Sanders is 100% correct that if you believe that climate is dire, that we need this piece of legislation that's like the New Deal in Biden's mind, that does have such a widespread, creates a social safety net that is widespread, creates a green economy, or bolsters it dramatically. This is the only chance. I mean, this is really the only chance, because if this isn't tied to it, you will get progressives, everybody, you will get screwed by Manchin. There's just no question about it. Bernie is completely right to say you lose the leverage. It is gone. They will have no motivation. Congressional calendar is on its way out. Midterms are coming up. It's just not happening. And so this really is the last chance. And if you don't hold out as Justice Democrats and as progressives in the House, you're getting absolutely nothing.
And the whole way that the bipartisan crew even got the momentum and got the energy to put together their bill was because of the pressure of the reconciliation bill.
Yes.
Like, they saw that there was a train leaving the station, and they thought, well, if we build a little toy train, then we can get that toy train moving, and maybe everyone will be happy with that one. And let's make sure it's a coal-powered toy train. But of course, Democrats were never going to agree with that. I mean, quite literally, they took all the climate provisions, almost all of them, and just took them out of the bipartisan bill, and even wrote into the law, insisted that 2/3 of the buses that were going to be funded by the bipartisan bill would have to be gas powered. You can't, subsidizing fossil fuels and blocking clean energy. And the idea that this Democratic Party at this moment is only going to accept that without a fight was always going to be crazy.
You know, that actually reminds me quickly of the time you used your amateur footage of the train at Dollywood in your radar. But I guess my question then for you is, part of this, is it delusions from, Chuck Schumer saying that we can still work something out, or is it just a blatant lie? Because I think there's certain people, Manchin, Sinema, who know that they can pretty much kill this big Build Back Better agenda that Biden sees as a New Deal in 2021. Right. I think they kind of know that they can kill it. Do you think Chuck Schumer knows that, or is he delusional?
I mean, he knows that they have the power to kill it. I mean, you have Democrats in the House who are saying, look, if you don't put immigration into this and just ram it through the parliamentarian, Elizabeth McDonough again yesterday said, no, your second attempt at immigration doesn't fly here. There are Democrats in the House that can kill the whole thing because the margins are so small. They're saying no. They're saying you need to just overrule this parliamentarian and just push ahead and put immigration there, or we're killing the whole thing. John Yarmouth has said we're all Joe Manchin. In other words, we all have the power to take this thing down. So yes, Manchin and Sinema could take it down, but if they take it down, they take down their bipartisan bill at the same time. They spent not just months crafting this specific package, they have spent years building up to this moment where they would be able to get Democrats and Republicans together to pass this roads and bridges bill. Kyrsten Sinema has spent the last couple months going around Arizona talking about the bipartisan infrastructure bill that she crafted as evidence that her political philosophy works, that what she's set out to do can still be done in the Senate. So yes, they can kill that, but they have to toss their baby out with the bathwater.
So here's my last question. Is the Democratic establishment pro Build Back Better? And then if Sinema and Manchin kill it and make it so that there will be no reconciliation bill, does that put them out of touch actually with the Democratic establishment? Yes,
they're absolutely. I mean, Build Back Better, that's Biden's cheesy slogan.
Right.
He's 100% in on it. Pelosi thinks it's her legacy. Schumer is 100% for it, thinks that this is the way that they hold on to Congress, the only way that they could potentially hold on to Congress. And people think, oh, well, Sinema just wants to become a corporate lobbyist. No. If she tanks the Biden agenda, she doesn't have pull then. She doesn't have, I mean, she could maybe be a lobbyist and lobby some House Republicans and some Senate Republicans. But if that's the kind of lobbyist you want, you go hire a Republican to do that. But nobody's going to be taking Sinema's calls if she blows this up. Could she get a board seat or some other type of quasi bribe right out of the gate of blowing this up? Sure, that's possible. But the financial incentives to her aren't as obvious as they used to be, because in order to be a lobbyist in good standing with K Street, you have to be in good standing with your party, because the corporations are buying your relationships with your party. So now Manchin is a different question, because people understand his hesitation and his temper tantrums, because Democrats win 30% of the vote in West Virginia. Mark Kelly, though, he's like, Build Back Better works for me.
Hell yeah.
He's above water. He's like probably in pretty good shape back home. So it makes it much harder for Sinema to claim that she's like politically forced to do what she's doing.
So let me just try to give you a silver lining from the other side of this as we wrap up 30,000-foot view. The good news is that the Democratic establishment, that the sort of progressive left has dragged the Democratic establishment, like you talked about how Bernie started with a $6 trillion deal and they're still talking about $3.5 trillion. That is a win for Bernie Sanders and the Bernie Sanders wing of the party. So to the extent that Manchin and Sinema saying we don't want to spend $3.5 trillion is out of step with the Democratic establishment, that's good news.
It is, and all of his campaign pledges only exist really because Bernie kind of set the tone further to the left and brought him over there.
That's exactly true. So there's your silver lining.
There we go. Let's take it. Next on Rising, Team Rising weighs in on the NBA players pushing back against mandatory vaccines. That's up next.